Yeah, so this guy that I follow on Twitter, his name's Connor. He was talking about like client. He also owns an agency, and he's talking about like client retention playbook. And I thought it was pretty interesting. And I'll list off kind of he has three things to bear in mind: communication, results, and pricing. And so when all of these are executed perfectly, you really shouldn't be losing clients at all. Churn is honestly not the norm. And it says communication. The three things to consider with client communications are where you communicate, what protocols you have, and how responsive you are. It says they use Slack, which is pretty much the industry standard. And this allows it says this allows us to do Slack Connect, where no new channel is made. Interesting. Oh, okay. That's that kind of newer feature for Slack. That makes sense. They also use Loom updates every 2 weeks. The week that they don't have the call, which is cool. We celebrate wins and normally have a separate channel for email and SMS approvals. It keeps everything clean and it makes it so the client is always in the loop. Having a call every 2 weeks is a huge help. Also, I know we kind of have like once a week with some of our clients, and then biweekly, and of course maybe that end of month kind of monthly, month over month kind of report call is really really cool. So yeah, we're still under communication, so that's really cool. So it's really just connecting with the client, communicating with them with Slack and Loom, having some biweekly calls with them, being responsive. He says obviously, and let's see. And it says there's no scenario in which a client should be waiting for a response for more than 12 hours. So that's definitely cool. And it says finally, while you're going to have wins, which you need to celebrate, you're also going to have some fuck ups. So you'll definitely want to call that out as well, is what he's saying. Acknowledge what happened, fix it, or show what you'll do to fix it, in the future, and then just don't let it happen again. So, and I think we're kind of going through that and just having those SOPs and having those reminders in the templates, like kind of like what we kind of experienced that today. And so luckily we have like really cool clients that know we're human and it is what it is, you know what I mean? But I think, just kind of owning it, just like, oh yeah, my bad, and then having a reminder, hey, let's try and like add that to something, add it to a reminder, so then we know.
Yeah, as much as you're doing like, repeat, like when it comes to tasks like that, as much as you can make it like checklist and brainless as possible, like you can just reduce those like little errors, because there's a lot to think about. You expect, even with just something that seems simple like email,
Right.
There's still a lot of like little checkpoints along the way and things to check for that, you may forget one or two. And so it's just nice to have like those little check boxes.
Exactly. The next one, number 2, is results. Self-explanatory. You want to have good results, right? It doesn't really say much because it is like what it is. The quicker you can get wins here and the smoother your onboarding process is, the better. So I think that's like the two components for results. Obviously having a good service, product, but then also being quicker wins. So the soon as they swipe the card, ideally we would want them to just like see money come up. It doesn't necessarily work like that directly for service businesses, but trying to close the gap as much as possible. So I think that's really cool. And then just having a smooth onboarding process is awesome, and we're definitely working on that. So yeah, I think that one's a good one. Results, obviously, and then pricing. What does he say? He says, I know many people struggle on this one, but it's kind of, it lacks the nuances. So it says, and it says you get so many types of Twitter. I don't even know what that word is. Raise your prices with no contents, no contacts, right? So it's like just raising your prices for no reason. You know what I mean? Um, but I think to your point, you were mentioning the other day, it's like let's time ourselves. You know what I mean? Let's like clock ourselves when we're building certain things. That way, we do have like some sort of foundational idea on how long this stuff takes, you know what I mean? And then we know how to build that, you know what I mean? So that's really cool. He says we conservatively settle on 70 to 75% as the number. Note, not one to five man shops like agencies. I'm not sure what that means, but at the end of the day, I think okay, here it is.
70 to
Right.
75% what?
Yeah, it says we conservatively settled on 70 to 75% as the number.
The
This is
number for what?
yeah, so I remember calculating with a media buyer, okay, friend, the percent of ads agencies that lose their clients money. Oh wow, we conservatively settled on 70 to 75% as the number. Wow, really?
70 to 75% of the agencies lose clients. Is that what he's saying?
Lose clients money.
Lose clients money. Okay.
Yeah, interesting. And so and this is because the pricing is simply insane. Okay, I guess that's like more geared towards media buyers. I'm not too in that, but he does say I do email and SMS marketing and would generally say to take 7 to 10% of the revenue you'll likely generate based on margins. Subtract a bit and do things on a tiered flat pricing structure that makes sense. You can be performance based without being on a percentage deal. By the way, so I guess yeah, he's saying using the 7 to 10% rule, but then subtracting a bit and then adding that as a flat rate, which is kind of neat. You understand? You see what he's saying?
Uh, I mean, I
Kind of.
understand 77 to 10% of revenue as a flat rate. Yeah, I understand that
Yeah.
part.
So we take 7 to 10% of their revenue, whichever that is, and then like just subtract a bit and do things on a tiered flat pricing structure that makes sense. I don't know. It sounds right in my head, but maybe not. But anyways, um,
Well, I'll just back up to like the communication and all that. I mean, I
okay.
just like I think when I think of like relationships in general, this may sound like philosophical or whatever, but like I think it's um, alignment, like having like a clear vision and like being aligned on that vision. So like when you start to work with like a brand and a group of people, like what are the goals that you're trying to achieve and how can we help you achieve those goals? Because when we talk bi-weekly or however often we're reporting, that's what we're trying to report on rather than just saying, here's your open rates and click rates. And, in the social media world, here's your CPC and your CAC, all these jargon words and
Right.
metrics but how is that meeting the overall goal? Right. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, cool. Now that we're aligned on like what the goal is and what we're trying to work towards. And obviously it's like revenue for every company at the end of the day, but like, how
Sure.
do we, what is our focus like on trying to get there,
Hmm.
um, and then, it's just like managing expectations, right? And like you kind of talked about like the, having a good process, like good
Hmm.
onboarding, good communication process, whether that be Slack or like what goes in Slack versus what goes in an email, and just kind of like I think having that kind of clear understanding with the client and setting the expectations properly of like this is how we do things. How do you guys prefer to work? And we can kind of meet in the middle. That way we're aligned, and
Hmm.
the expectations are clear across both sides. Like this is how we'll do approvals if we do
Sure.
things like that. So
Right.
I think if you kind of miss those early steps, then it can be easy to get down the road and think you're doing everything well, where in the meantime, the client's been kind of grumbling in the back, and then you've got churn just a few months down the road because the client has, maybe spent like a couple months with you, but they're not really super jazzed on the results, or maybe you have been doing good results, but they just don't really enjoy working with you because the communication or the expectations weren't properly set up in the beginning. Yep. And so, I think that the relationships and the communication part are like probably more important, or at least are just as important as like the results are, because anyone can get results if they know what the heck they're doing. But do you have a good process? Are you fun to work with? Like, do you communicate in the style that aligns with like how our brand likes to work and communicate? Yep. Like stuff like that. So
yeah, no, I love that. And it makes me think about like not always like thinking about like the revenue, the money, it's like kind of the culture of like the partnership, you know what I mean? I feel like that's really important. It's like, I don't know, like, if the money was good and like the work was good, but for whatever reason, there wasn't that connection with like vibes, like both good vibes on either side. Right. And you know what I mean? I feel like there's like, which is cool. Like, I think we watched a video on a guy who was like, hey, so, we're good on the money side, that's what we charge, but let's just make sure that, we're aligned on the culture side. This is kind of how we do things. Are y'all okay with that? You know what I mean? And we can kind of, like you said, meet in the middle, but at the end of the day, we do have a process, and that's why that's like part of our product, you know what I mean? It is the process of it being so smooth,
and you're really like dating people like during this process, right? Like I don't think any business that works with other businesses in that B2B relationship has gone without finding a bad date, right? You date, we work with all these different clients, and thankfully the clients that we work with now, we love working with, and it's completely different than it was last year, where we had a small handful that were really hard to work with, and we just, it was a really bad date every time. Yeah. So
it just didn't connect. It didn't. It'd be funny if there was, because like all those dating apps, like, man, there's something like Hinge. One of them is like, at the time, that's where I met my fiance at was on Hinge, but like, it's real granular, you can really pick like certain things that you want or don't want, and it would be kind of neat if there was like some sort of like find an agency, like app, and it's like, like, do they go surfing in the mornings? You know what I mean? Like, what do they like to do? You know what I mean? It's like finding like really cool partners, because I know agency has like a bad name to it, because there are some, I just saw one not too long ago. This guy on Twitter was getting called out because he was faking the screenshots. Like in Klaviyo, you can see like the revenue shit, like how much you've made for the client in revenue, but he forgot to change the pie chart. And the pie chart still showed at like 10%, but it showed 45% on the number. So
it's just terrible that people will go to that link to do stuff like that. And
it makes really everybody else look bad.
You're right. It ruins it for all of us,
Seriously. That's wild, man. So
I'm glad they got called out.
Me too. Yeah. And he had like a pretty big following on Twitter, but that just makes me think he just bought most of them. He bought Twitter followers just to make himself look good. So
yeah, and I mean the nature of like social media in general is like so many things there's no context given to a lot of those things. It's like it's just some random quote, and there's no like, or some random result, and you're just like, okay, like I don't know, right. It always kind of irks me a little bit with some of that stuff, because I'm really just more about like, let's just add value rather than just trying to like stroke our own egos online.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like I'm a little skeptical with like marketing on Twitter. Like, maybe one day like we'll we'll have like a bigger following on here, and like anything that we post, like other like the actual brands are on here. But and honestly, I just feel like Twitter is just like has a bunch of newbie agencies, and anybody that's a little more advanced just like sends out all this like free information, and all these other newbie agencies just grab onto it. And it's just like this cycle of just like the same information over and over. Some, don't get me wrong, some of it's good. Like we just read this one here, client retention, but like, I mean, that's his own thoughts, you know what I mean? You know, his own experience, but you know, you just called out your own, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I think it's kind of all the same, you know what I mean? But I don't know, like, I don't really, I could be totally wrong. I just don't see, you know, you posting like a screenshot of Clavio, and you know, I made this client 200,000. I mean, our agent or like brands actually, oh man, yeah, like that's awesome. Let me get in touch with him. Does that actually work? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm,
And again, it's like completely out of context. It's like 200,000 could be like 30% less than what they usually make, but it sounds
yeah,
good out of context.
right, exactly. That too, you know what I mean? Like, but you know, even I don't know, like this one right here is like your seven-figure Black Friday Cyber Monday email playbook in a nutshell. It's got 14 likes, 2 retweets, and one person commented on it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. You know, maybe I'm looking at it differently, a before and after. You know what I mean? Like the numbers of Clavio. I
Hmm.
don't know if brands are actually on here doing
Yeah, it's
that.
interesting.
Um, but yeah, man.